Hey, Dr. Amber here. Today's episode is part of a 10-part series for my virtual book tour. Yes, I am going on tour virtually, and I'm having 10 amazing conversations with people that I know and I really admire around the topics of overwhelm, overstimulation, dysregulation, all in preparation for my new book, A Parent's Guide to Self-Regulation, a practical framework for breaking the cycles of dysregulation and mastering emotions for parents and children. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. This conversation I really enjoyed, and I think you'll get a lot out of it too. And also, don't forget to order your copy of the book. You can get it on Amazon, Target, Walmart, Barnes & Noble, literally wherever you buy books. Okay? Enjoy the episode, and we'll talk soon. Hey, good evening, everyone. Dr. Amber here, and we are here for virtual book tour stop number 3. And in case you're just joining us, this is my virtual book tour. I am having 10 amazing conversations during this month, during the month of April, May, and June. All in anticipation of my new book, A Parent's Guide to Self-Regulation. So I'm very excited for tonight's conversation. We're going to be talking about emotional regulation in postpartum. I do have a guest, and I see that she's in here, so give me a moment to get her in here, and then we'll get started with our chat. But in the meantime, how's everyone doing? I hope y'all think you'll really enjoy our conversation tonight. Hi, Deja.
Hi, how are you? Let me turn up the volume.
I'm great. Yeah, I'm turning up my volume too. Can you hear me well?
Yeah, I can hear you well. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Perfect. Hi.
Oh my gosh, thanks. So first, let me just say thank you so much for your support in what I'm doing with this book, but then also your time. I just want to acknowledge, I know as a new mom and, what all you're doing, time is so limited. And so I'm just so thankful that you agreed to talk with me tonight. And I'm so excited for our conversation because I know that there's probably so many moms watching that want to hear a little bit about your experience of emotional regulation, but then also want to hear us talk about that and what could help them through this process. But before we get into it, could you please just introduce yourself, and then I'll introduce myself after you, but you go first.
Of course. First of all, I just want to say I'm so happy to be here with you. And I feel like the last time we got to connect, I was pregnant. So we have a lot to catch up on. But yeah, just introducing myself to our audience today. I'm Deja Riley. I am a mom first. That is the first title that I'm going with, and it seems to be my identity these days. But I'm also a health and wellness professional, and I own a company by the name of Deja Riley Athletics. And I've partnered with several brands. I'm a former dancer. I've had a long career in getting to work with multiple artists and directors and choreographers, and on and on and on I could go. But today I am here to talk a lot about my postpartum journey and talk about your upcoming book.
I'm so excited for it. And I'm excited to merge the two. I want to hear about your postpartum journey, and I want to see how, some of the topics in the book can relate or correlate or help support that journey. I'm really excited for us to be having this conversation. When I thought about the topics that I wanted to talk about, I knew that I wanted to talk about something related to postpartum because I know that that's such a heavy time. It's such a busy time. There's a lot of emotions in postpartum. And I was just like, okay, I feel like if Deja's up to it, I would really love to have this conversation with her. So again, I'm just so happy and excited that we get to talk. But for anyone who is new to me, my name is Dr. Amber. I'm a clinical psychologist, and now I'm an author of the book, A Parent's Guide to Self-Regulation. And, the book is truly for parents who are realizing that maybe in their parenting journey, they don't really feel prepared to handle their own big emotions. I think a lot of time in the parenting space and online, there's a lot of conversation about, well, how do we support our kids in their big emotions? How do we, help our kids learning how to manage tantrums? How do we help our kids when they go through challenges? But we ourselves also have to know how to do that as well. And so there's just a group of us, especially I think in the millennial generation, where we're just kind of coming to this realization like, I don't feel completely well equipped to handle my own big feelings, the challenges of life. And I want my kid to be prepared to do it too. So I need to really think about this for myself. And so the book is for that person who maybe has struggled with emotional regulation, but also who wants to learn more. Um, so let's just talk about postpartum. So also, you all, as we talk, feel free to ask questions. I will be scrolling through to see if anyone has questions or comments, and we'll definitely engage with you all through that process. But Deja, I would love to know, how's it going? I just feel like that's the first. I don't even think I can go into conversation without first checking in with you. How are you doing? How is baby? How are things going?
First of all, thank you so much for that. I think so often in postpartum, a lot of people ask about the baby, but don't necessarily ask about mom. And so I appreciate you just taking a moment to pause and ask me how I'm doing. Today, I am doing really, really well. And that is partially because my son slept through the night last night for 10 hours and 45 minutes. Y'all,
Hey,
if
hey,
you know, you know.
look, a lot of us on here know. We know.
And so yeah, so we've been in the thick of sleep training. Today I feel really good because my son slept through the night, and I was struggling with that for like the past week, like really, trying to press forward and not cave while we were doing sleep training. And it was something that when I first started out, like in the beginning of my pregnancy, and I was laying out all the things that I wanted to do, once my kid got here, and I was highly against sleep training, especially this cry it out method. And we did a variation of that for sleep training, but not to dive too deep into that. I would say, like, right now, like, there's so much going on. I'm living in duality. Like, most days I'm feeling exhausted and depleted, but also full of so much joy and so much gratitude. And that seems to be the story of my life these days.
Ooh, you said it all so perfectly. But first, let's just double back. Shout out to being able to sleep through the night. Like, I,
Yes.
you and actually, what? I watched your story a little bit about this process, and I know that baby slept through the night, but you still woke up to pump. But even still, shout out to a baby sleeping through the night because we know struggle. I'm so glad that you had that experience, and I'm really hopeful that more days like that will come for you and baby and for your family, because we know how crucial it is to feel rested and to get sleep, and we also know that in postpartum that can feel few and far between.
For
Absolutely.
sure. And sleep deprivation is just, it's
Yes.
just an evil monster. And I really am really grateful that I am going to continue, I'm speaking it into existence, get very restful nights so that I can be the best mom that I can be.
Absolutely. I'm really hopeful for that for you as well. But I think what I love about your process through this conversation, but then also what you've been sharing online, and I know that you've been blogging a bit about your experience, is that you're so insightful about what's going on for you and how you're feeling and how things have changed. And what I'm thinking about is, I know sometimes postpartum can feel like such a struggle because it can really catch us off guard just with regard to how fast things have changed, or how much our feelings have changed, or just not anticipating some of what we're going to feel. Was that an experience that you had too? Just what your insight about it now, was that something that had to build over time, or how did that come about for you?
Truthfully, Dr. Amber, I think I'm still in the process of building,
Okay.
and things constantly feel different. Things constantly feel like they're changing and shifting,
Mhm.
and I'm constantly evolving. I know that I'm not the same woman that I was when I walked into the hospital on November 8th, and I know that I never will be, and I'm still learning to accept and embrace that. There are so many different challenges and so many different changes that you're going to face in postpartum. And I will definitely say that, like, it feels like a whirlwind sometimes. I don't know up from down. I half the time I forget what I'm trying to say, so that might happen in this conversation. But, overall, like, no, I don't think I was prepared at all. Like, I don't think that I knew fully what I was getting into. I knew that I wanted my son. I knew that I desperately felt the innate desire to be a mom, but no clue until I actually got into it what I was about to face.
Yeah, period. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm thinking about the topic of emotional regulation or emotional dysregulation. And I know my experience, and I want to hear yours too. My experience was that I really didn't have a concept for emotional regulation or being dysregulated until I became a parent.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to becoming a parent, I felt like I was someone who did have big emotions. I still do. I've always been, the kid that felt a lot of things, and even into adulthood. But I always felt like I was able to manage how I felt, or control how I felt, or cope well. But there's something happened when I became a parent where I had more moments where things felt out of control for me, or it felt like I don't fully understand how I feel, or, a feeling would come and it would completely catch me off guard. And so I guess I'm saying this to say, for anyone who is watching, and if you are in postpartum, I want you to know that sometimes that experience of postpartum can feel very intense, emotionally intense, can feel, personally very intense. Your relationships may shift in really wild ways, and that can feel very intense. Your identity is going to shift in ways that can feel really intense. And so if it feels like you're having trouble with managing or coping, that is okay. And we definitely want you to get some support. But Deja, what was your experience of this before you became a parent, before hearing about this book that we're also going to be talking about? Did you have any concept or thought about emotional regulation or being dysregulated? What is that something that you were even thinking about?
Truthfully, I think I was in a season of preparation before I became a parent without even knowing it. I don't think I was really able to pinpoint the term emotional regulation or emotional intelligence or self-regulation. I didn't really know those terms, or I wasn't using them commonly in my vocabulary. But I was in this season of preparation, especially being in therapy and doing all the things necessary to take care of myself, mind, body, and spirit before I became a mom. And so, for me, I did have very big emotions that I used to suppress. And I'm a performer. So that's something that I used to talk about a lot more, back when I was a dancer. Like, entertaining, you have to always put on that smile and go out on stage, and the show must go on. And so I found myself in that season of my life suppressing a lot of those big emotions that I had. They were still bubbling internally, but it wasn't something that I was very vocal about. It wasn't until, these past few years that I was going through the fertility struggles, and then I got pregnant and then became a mom, that I really embraced those terms and really began to do a deep dive on what they meant for me. I think I've done a lot of work in this past year really on myself to really learn, like, how do I express how I'm feeling, not just to others but just to myself even. And I think that's been a huge thing for me, a big thing that I've journaled about. I've talked a lot to my husband and my friends about. And you were talking about the shifting of relationships. That's actually been a huge part of this season for me, because as I became more vocal about my big emotions, those relationships quickly started to shift because it wasn't something that I was in practice of before. And so now that I'm like, okay, well, I got to let it out, because if it stays in, I'm going to internally burst, but I've got to be able to not only be honest with myself, but be honest with the other people that are in my circle and that I keep close to me, so that I can be healthier, mind, body, and spirit. So, yeah, at first I would say it wasn't something I was quite familiar with. But in preparing to become a parent and entering into this new season where I now am a mom, it's something that I'm very conscious of.
Ooh, I love so much of what you said. I think one, I love the idea of parents, prior to becoming parents, utilizing therapy to guide that process. I just think there's so much that comes up once you become a parent that, again, can really like drive how you're feeling, bring up really intense emotions, bring up stuff from your own childhood. And it's just like, whoa, I wanted to be a parent, but I didn't sign up for all of this, this emotional journey. But I think what you said is so key. The habit of suppressing our emotions. I think that is something that is so common. And, those of you who watch me often know I talk a lot about generational differences. I love talking about millennials and just the millennial generation. And many of us grew up having to suppress our emotions. And it was because maybe our parents didn't have great approaches for how to help us handle our emotions, or maybe didn't help give us the language we needed to express ourselves, or maybe they themselves didn't get that. And so we grew up learning how to suppress our emotions to keep ourselves safe or keep ourselves protected, or not to make waves in the family. But then in adulthood, we quickly learned that that's not adaptive anymore. And then especially when you become a parent, because emotions intensify and there's just no way you can continue to bottle that in. What I have found and what I talk about this in the book is that there are so many factors that contribute to why someone might be dysregulated, and improper means of expressing your emotions is one of them. I think that's something to really pay attention to. And I'm so glad you brought that up. If you notice, and so now anyone watching, if you feel like, or you notice that you don't have proper tools or even sense of safety to express how you feel, that's something I want you all to really be considering, especially in postpartum. Because again, we've already said in postpartum, there's going to be this whirlwind of emotion. New experiences, big shift in your relationships and your identity. We have to have, our method for how we are going to express how we feel. So I'm so glad you realize that, and what's working for you in terms of expressing yourself, but then also coping in postpartum. Actually, I feel like I'm jumping ahead. I'm going to backtrack a bit. um, I forgot. I want to talk a little bit more about what actually has been difficult for you when we're thinking about regulating ourselves or self-regulation in postpartum. What do you think has been the hardest part?
Dr. Amber, I don't know if you experienced this in your journey to becoming a mother and then shifting into actually being a mother, but I had anxiety before, and then that shift into postpartum anxiety and a little bit of postpartum depression was so heavy.
Yeah.
And so, I think that that's like one of the biggest challenges for me is accepting that, these conditions exist. And like, it's normal to feel lonely. It's normal to feel isolated, even when you're surrounded by a bunch of people. I oftentimes would feel just like down, and I would not know exactly why I felt down. And, my husband was trying to also figure out why I was feeling down. And he's also a fixer too. So like he just wanted to help me in any way possible. And I just couldn't even fully explain to him that like my hormones had completely plummeted, and like I felt like I was all over the place. I didn't feel like I knew who I was. I didn't feel like I could even recognize the person that I was looking at in the mirror. There was so much just negative self-image and negative self-talk and the woes of recovery. My body, oh my goodness, I'm like, this body doesn't even feel like my own. The normal things that I'm used to feeling within my body have completely, transformed, and I feel like I am sitting in new skin now. So I think that some of those things really had a deep effect on me, to even to today. I'm 6 months postpartum and I'm still figuring it out. I'm still moving with the waves and the shifts and the changes that are happening daily for me and for my son.
Absolutely. Wow. So much of what you said, it just rings so true. And there's like a billion ways in my head that I want to go with this. But I will say that I also am someone who has basically had anxiety since I was born. Like I've always been anxious. I was an anxious kid, became an anxious adult, and now I'm also an anxious parent. And so I had a very, very, very bad experience of postpartum anxiety after my second child. And I've talked about this on my podcast. My postpartum anxiety was around like my own mortality and whether my body was okay, whether I felt safe in my body, fearing that I was not going to live. And it was just so daunting. And I never want anyone to experience that. And I know it happens. And so just that feeling, I don't know about you, but I felt really out of control. I just felt like, wow, I literally, like, I'm aware of what's happening, but I cannot gain control or calm myself down. I was just so worried and so afraid. And that went on for months.
Yeah.
But, as I was hearing you talk, I was thinking about when I think about dysregulation for parents, I think about three different buckets. I think many of us first think about emotional dysregulation. So, like, we're talking about our feelings, the sadness, the loneliness, the worry, the anxiety, the fear, sometimes the anger. I know we talk a lot about mom rage. That can come up in postpartum or just parenthood in general, that emotional experience that feels out of control, feels out of balance. But then you also really spoke so well to this physical sense of dysregulation too. So physical dysregulation is absolutely a thing where your body just feels off. Or, for some people that can manifest as just insomnia, not being able to sleep, not being able to fall asleep, can't stay asleep. For many people, they have a lot of cardiovascular symptoms. So racing heart palpitations, shortness of breath, or maybe they're just really fidgety or easily getting sweaty. Like just your physical body feels antsy or anxious. And then there's also cognitive dysregulation too. And that is what's the chatter in your mind doing? Like what are the thoughts going on in your head? Do they feel out of control? Is your mind racing? Or are the things that are being said in your head unkind? So, all of that is happening in postpartum, and it's just like, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah.
I saw a few comments. But Deja, if you have another comment, let me know. I'm going to scroll through real quick because I saw a few comments that I definitely wanted to speak to. Someone says, my mom got a therapist for me and I still don't feel comfortable to open up to her. I saw that comment and I wanted to just speak to that. And Deja, you let me know if you have comments too, but I highly, highly encourage you to don't give up on that process of therapy, because many times we know we need that help, we know we need that support, but it's really just getting through the door and that first step of being vulnerable. I think this happens for women a lot, especially women of color. Just that sense of vulnerability is just not something that we feel comfortable with. And Deja and I have already talked about this experience of suppressing emotions and not feeling comfortable expressing emotions. So continue to seek out a therapist that can help you feel comfortable and have that conversation with the therapist. Let them know, hey, I'm not comfortable, but I know I want to be here, and just see how that goes. And if it doesn't feel like the right fit, try another one, because I really want everyone to have that experience of therapy and to feel safe to open up and tackle these issues.
Yeah. Dr. Amber, so much of what you said prior to the therapy piece resonated so deeply with me in those three buckets. And so I really cannot wait to get my hands on your book and like really dive into what those three buckets are for me. But on the therapy piece, I would say that, for me, I think I am in a fortunate position that my therapist knew me before I was pregnant. And so I had started a relationship with her prior to, this season of my life, and had already been working with her for a couple of years before getting into my pregnancy and postpartum. I will say this, I've had a handful of different therapists over, the course of my life. And I would say that it takes time to get into that relationship and really be able to dig deep and divulge all this personal information about yourself. And so, to whoever said that, I just want to encourage you that you don't have to spill your entire life on the table in your first session, not even in your second session. It's going to take time. Just take it step by step and know that, the same way that you would court a friend, a new friend, like, and step into even a new romantic relationship, it's, very similar with your therapist. Like, take your time. You're taking your time in diving into a new relationship, and so treat it as so. You don't have to right away just feel like, okay, I've got to just lay it all out for you.
Mm-hmm.
Take your time in getting to, know yourself even in the process of that, and allow yourself the grace and the time and the space to ease into that relationship.
Well said. Very well said. It's a process, it's a journey, it's a relationship that will grow. And so, no pressure to share everything in one session. Absolutely. Reading through comments again, someone just gave you a shout out. They said that they have been following you since the mirror days and your workouts were their favorite. Keep up the good work and be kind to yourself. Yay. No, amazing followers or fans that just love you. So, yes, yes. Okay, I want to make sure I see if there's any more questions before. Someone else said, thanks for sharing those physical symptoms of postpartum anxiety. Often we mention symptoms first, but we're not sure of what they are. Yes, absolutely. I think it's so important, because sometimes there's either what I have found, there's just a lack of awareness. So sometimes people, and we're talking about postpartum, so women may not be in their body or attuned enough to really know what's going on, or you are, but you are not aware of why it's happening or what's happening. So it's so important to just really get grounded up to know, what's happening for me, how do I actually feel, and now can I actually talk about it, and do I have the right language for it, do I know what's going on. Yeah, so important. So now I'm going to go to the question. But we've already talked about some of the challenges that you've been experiencing. We've kind of applied some of the concepts to the book for that. But what has been working for you just with regard to managing your emotions, beating overwhelm, feeling regulated? What has been working for you so far, and or what's a work in progress for you?
You know, I think so much of it is a work in progress for me, but I will say I have pulled on some older tools that I've used and then found some new things that I can add to just my daily life to help me push through. I will say journaling is a really big thing for me, and getting back into writing, especially sharing my experience through a blog. I have a Substack that I talk about my postpartum journey on, and I try to put out a piece every Wednesday. Sometimes that doesn't happen and I allow myself the grace, but yeah, it's been really nice to like consistently get back into writing. I know writing was always something that was therapeutic for me, so it was like an old tool that I brought back into my life and just made it work in this season a little differently. Before, I was doing a lot of private journaling and I didn't really share the things that I was going through. But in this season, it's been really helpful to connect with other moms and just other parents in general. And so that's the next thing that I will say. One of the tools that I use is my Mom Tribe hotline, which I just have a list of other moms that are, some of them in a similar season as I am. They had their baby, end of last year, or just had a baby beginning of this year. And then I've got moms that have got 2-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 10-year-olds that I can call on and just like vent, ask questions, have a laugh, celebrate a milestone. I think my tribe has been just so incredible. I've connected with moms near and far, moms that are like within my, within the proximity of like where I live. And then also I've connected with moms that are like overseas or like, through my virtual community. And it's been just so amazing getting to hear other people's stories, just to like, get advice about certain stages that I'm entering into. And yeah, I just think like that's probably been one of the tools that I've used the most, is like leaning on my tribe. I also have really been making it a, a priority to take care of myself, because I think in the very beginning, especially when I first got home from the hospital, well, I went to a postpartum retreat first. And then when I got home from that, I was lost. I had no idea what I was supposed to be doing. I don't know why somebody let me leave the hospital facility with a brand new human that I am responsible for. But yeah, like even simple things like making sure that I shower on a daily basis, like making time for that. That's important for me. Making sure that like, I get a manicure and a pedicure and a massage every once in a while. Taking time to like comb my hair, and like things that you oftentimes like take for granted when you don't have a child. Like these are things that I'm trying to make sure that I consistently implement into my daily life, because I notice how much it makes me feel just better about myself. I know that movement was a huge thing for me. And so like incorporating that back into my daily life, whether it's going out and taking a walk, or when my son is napping, doing like a 10-minute workout on YouTube, or, finding time to go to a workout class and asking like my mother-in-law or my mom to like watch my son. It's absolutely like positively non-negotiable for me to do things for me, because when I feel good, I can be the best mom possible for my son. And so those are just a few of the things that I've been utilizing in these months that I've been going through postpartum. And I know that I'll continue to use them in this journey moving forward.
Uh, I love it. And I love how so much of, taking care of yourself in postpartum, but then also making sure that you feel regulated and your ability to regulate yourself, it all comes back to how am I treating myself? Am I prioritizing myself in all these other things that are also important? Do I have support? Am I voicing or, asking for the help that I need? Am I utilizing the tools that will help me navigate this journey? And it feels like, there are a lot of things that you're doing and you're putting it all together and you're really figuring out what works for you. And I just love that. And, the one thing I was thinking about in the book, there's this framework for how someone can help themselves to become more regulated. And again, we're talking about postpartum today. And so if there's someone who is in postpartum and thinking, okay, how do I make sure that I feel grounded, that I'm feeling regulated, that I'm not feeling like I'm succumbing to, all of my big emotions? I like it to think about these 3 areas that really can help us know where to do some work. One, I think about this practical portion of it. So the practicalities of it. Am I taking care of myself? What skills do I need? What tools do I need? Do I have the support that I need? Am I journaling? Those really tangible things that you might learn in therapy, or a lot of times we learn online because there's a lot of therapists and psychologists talking about things like this. Practically, do you just know how to cope with your everyday? And I think that's a really good first step. And it sounds like you have so many tools for that. You said journaling, you said movement, you said social support, you said making sure that there's a good routine for you and taking care of yourself. There's a schedule. You're talking about sleep. All of that falls in that bucket of practical skills for coping. But then there's also this other part that I think we talked about first, honestly, and I call it this conscious awareness of, am I aware of my emotions? Do I actually know how I feel? Do I have language for it? I find so often that we can become very dysregulated when we are not in tune with how we feel, because the feelings are there regardless of whether you're aware of them or not. The feelings are there regardless of whether you want to admit it or can acknowledge it or not. And so the more that we are consciously aware of what's going on for us in our parenting experience or our postpartum experience, that also gives us greater ability to cope. And then lastly, and I'm sure maybe we'll talk about this before we end, I know we have a few more minutes, but there's this realistic aspect to managing dysregulation. And that is really just being honest with yourself about, hey, I'm a parent or I'm in postpartum and I'm gonna have hard days. There's gonna be some moments where I really just feel terrible. There are gonna be moments where I really just feel like I didn't do my best, or, my life has changed and I do want some of it to go back, but I know it won't. Just really acknowledging the grief, the loss, the shifts, the changes, and practicing that radical acceptance for, these things that are happening right now are hard. And while I'm going to do what I can to manage, there's so much of it that I don't have control over. I find so often that we become very dysregulated and have trouble managing and coping because we are fighting against something that is just reality. So curious to hear if that is something that you've thought about or if that has come up for you in your postpartum journey too.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And Dr. Amber, just to like shift the conversation a little bit, because I have some questions for you. You've been giving so much amazing wisdom, and I don't want to forget this thought because mom brain. But I like, as you were talking earlier, you mentioned mom rage, and like an alarm went off inside of me because I know I've experienced so much of that. I know that there's probably other moms here that might have the same question as me. So I feel like I need to ask, like, for someone who is just hearing about self-regulation and emotional regulation for maybe even the first time, where do you even start? Like, what are maybe 2 or 3 tips to discovering your own self-regulation and emotional regulation as a parent and just, as a person in general?
Absolutely. That's a great question. One, I think definitely if you haven't already, order the book. So let me put in a plug right here. I think if this is something that is just coming to awareness for you and you realize, like, I have been having this rage or this anger or, this irritability and I can't manage it, this book will be so important for you because it'll help you to learn to identify what's going on for you and at the same time have some compassion for yourself as well. I think that's important to say because a lot of times when we realize that we're having these experiences, there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of embarrassment, and that leads to isolation, and we don't get what we need because we're afraid to talk about it, we're afraid to admit it, we're afraid to let people know that, on the outside it looks like things are going well, but we are really losing our shit, we're struggling. And so please pre-order the book, A Parent's Guide to Self-Regulation. I just think it'll be so helpful because it'll give you language, but also make you feel less alone.
Yeah.
So getting back to the question though, I think the very first step for a parent who is first coming to realization of some of these things, the identification of how you're feeling. I think very first step is that connection to yourself. Do you know how you feel? Do you know what you're feeling? Do you know what you're experiencing? Because we really can't learn how to cope with our feelings if we don't know what they are. We can't express our feelings if we don't know what we're feeling. We can't. And so I would say that if you're noticing that maybe you're having mom rage or a lot of rage and anger, acknowledge that that's happening and take a few moments to pause and reflect about what's going on for you. I did this a lot in my, I noticed that I started to have a lot of rage after my second child. And now, hindsight, I'm able to look at that and see if that was me adjusting to becoming a mom of two. I had an infant and a toddler. And for a while, I had two under two. And it was just so challenging. There was a lot of irritability, a lot of rage, a lot of yelling, a lot of just me that did not feel like me. And in that moment, what really helped me, the first step was just to really realize, whoa, this is happening and I don't like it. I don't know what to do about it just yet, but I really just need to pay attention to what's going on for me. And a lot of times I noticed the moments that I found myself yelling or I found myself in a rage, some of the factors that were contributing, I was exhausted or I was extremely anxious about something. I was really worried. I was afraid. And so I was able to identify, okay, these are the precursors that are leading me to be really dysregulated. And for you or anyone watching, it might be something else. For me, my big triggers are always worry, fear, anxiety. Those are the things that kind of send me into a spiral. But for someone else, it could be feeling of rejection. You know, for someone else, it could be loneliness and isolation. It could be sadness, or it could be, you know, feeling a loss of control, you know, which happens a lot in parenthood because we cannot control our children no matter how much they want you to believe you can. So really, again, that first step is just taking a time to really get to know yourself in a new way, to learn how you are feeling so that you then can take the next step to figure out, okay, well, what are the tools? How can I begin to cope? Yeah.
That's really good.
That was a
Yeah. Yeah, that's really helpful. I think, like, being able to pinpoint your emotions can sometimes be tough. And what I found oftentimes is that my emotions were layered. So it wasn't just one thing. And so I think for me, it's like being able to write those things down allows me to like peel back the layers like an onion. I'm like, okay, well, first I'm feeling frustrated. And then I'm also feeling sad. And then just kind of allowing myself to feel all of those things at once, but to focus in on each one and acknowledge each one so that I can come to a better understanding of self. So yeah, that's really, really helpful. And yes, pre-order the book is actually step one. I wanted to ask you, Dr. Amber, what was your inspiration behind the book? What actually, was the driving force? And then also, as another new mom, where did you find the time to actually write this book? Because you're a mom of two. I'm a mom of one, and I'm already like, I barely have time to like step aside and like write, a 5 or 6 minute think piece on my blog. So I'm like, a whole book overwhelms me.
funny. It's so funny because someone else asked me this, and I was like, okay, how did I write this book? So to answer the first question, it's so funny, and this is, you know, how did this book come to be? I think this kind of digs into my spirituality. I never in a million years would have thought I would have wrote this book, because I was struggling with it. Like, I was the mom yelling at her kids. You know, I was the mom getting upset about the smallest things. Like, I was the mom that literally was not herself because I was so dysregulated. So this was not something that just came to me. Um, you know, I believe in a higher power. I believe in God. And I believe that there was something that needed to happen for me to help myself. And this book came about as an opportunity. All truthfulness, I was approached by a publisher to write this book. And at first, I was so hesitant. I was like, I don't know about this topic. You know, like secretly, I am struggling with this. But I was like, you know what, Amber? You know, I've been a psychologist for a really long time. You know, I am capable. I fully believe in myself. I've accomplished a lot of things. And I just told myself, look, we're going to go on a journey because I know that this is something that you want to improve with. And this is also something that so many other people need. So let's just do it. And so I said yes to this thing that I felt like I wasn't completely ready for. And it transformed my life, you know, and I'm not just saying that because I want you all to buy the book. Like it makes me emotional thinking about how much I have changed just through the process of writing this book. Because, you know, everything that I write in terms of the tools and the strategies, these are things that I've done to get myself from A to B. You know, I sometimes joke with my husband now, you know, I'll be doing something with the kids and I'm like, because, you know, I'm regulated now, so I can handle this. You know, I'm a person. And I'm grateful for that because now I get to have these experiences with my kids that feel so much more joyful and so much more hopeful and, you know, that are not filled with anxiety and irritability all the time. Yes, I still get anxious. Yes, I still every now and then get irritable, but it's not the primary. And there's so much more joy and so much more goodness that I get to feel. And I'm happy for that. So this was not me. This was someone else, something else that needed me to do this. And it probably was for me. And now I'm excited that other people get to experience it. Um, I'm just grateful and thankful. And I can't wait for other people to read it. And I'm so hopeful that it'll change someone else's life too, like it has changed mine. How did I find the time? You know, I just So this is my astrology side. I don't know. For those of you who follow me, y'all know I'm very into astrology as well. I just say that I have a Virgo placement. Shout out to the Virgos because Virgos get things done. I'm a Virgo moon, and I just am very like, oh, let's write out a plan. Structure, I got it. Organization, that's me. And so that has always just been a skill of mine, being able to really plan things out, be organized, be really disciplined. I don't even know how to talk through the strategies, but I will say, and this is a mindset thing that I think every woman should have, especially after becoming a parent. I think society likes to lead us to believe that once you become a mother, your value diminishes a bit in terms of your professional aspirations or your creative aspirations. And I have always been really intentional about letting myself know, hey, I'm a mom. I'm an amazing mom. And I'm all these other amazing things too. And I refuse to allow motherhood to get in the way of all these other desires I have. You know, I love my children. I'm an amazing mom, but I'm also a really amazing psychologist. I'm a great writer. I love learning, and I just really fully embrace those parts of me as much as I embrace motherhood. So that has helped, you know, because I think if I weren't feeling so connected to those other parts, I wouldn't take it as seriously, or I would feel guilty about it. But it's like, hey, I need to do this because I love these things. I'm great at these things. So of course I need to make time to write. Of course I need to let my husband know when I need some extra time to do this. Of course I'm gonna wake up at 5 a.m. to do this because it's important. So I think it's, you know, the mindset of knowing, hey, I still have value to add and contribute into this world even while being a mom. But just, you know, just realizing the importance of it all too. And my Virgo placement helped a lot.
Oh, Amber, that is so inspiring to me. And honestly, I'm going to adopt the I'm a mom and statement because it's true. You know, I think that mom becomes like the center of our identity
Yeah.
once we step into that chapter of our lives. And it stays with us forever, but there is that other side of things and what you are beyond being a mom, and it's okay to make those things a priority as well. So thank you so much for saying that. And I know that we're short on time, but I want you to tell everyone where they can pre-order your book and when the actual launch date comes.
Oh, yes. Perfect question to end on. Thank you for Um, oh yes, the book, A Parent's Guide to Self-Regulation. I'm gonna say the full title for y'all. I gotta remember it's a long one. A Parent's Guide to Self-Regulation, a practical framework for breaking the cycles of dysregulation and mastering emotions for parents and children. Yes, you're gonna get all of that in the book. All of it. So you can pre-order your copy literally anywhere you want to get your books. Amazon, it's on Target, saw it on Walmart's website the other day, Barnes and Noble, all of the major retailers is there. So you can pre-order your copy. The release date is June 18th. So we're about a month and a half away, which is crazy to me because this is something I've been working on for about a year now. Just the project being started and writing through the book, like I've been thinking about this for over a year, and so to think that it's almost here is just wild to me. So I would love for you all to pre-order your copy so that on June 18th it can show up at your doorstep and we all can start the process of reading this book together. And I'm just so excited and cannot wait for you all to get your copies and really feel how powerful and life-changing this book can be.
Well, I'll be reading it along with everyone else. I cannot wait. And Dr. Amber, I just want to say, like, I'm so excited for you. I'm so proud of you. I'm so honored to be in this space with you. And thank you for inviting me to have this conversation. Honestly, it was therapeutic for me too, because I was like, oh, I get to like talk about these things that like I'm on a daily basis, I'm feeling them, but like not getting to express them all the time. So thank you so much for allowing me to be here with you.
Thank you so much. I completely respect the time of women and parents, and especially women in postpartum. So thank you for saying yes to this conversation. I think it was amazing. For anyone who maybe came in late, I will be saving this so you can definitely watch the whole thing. And Deja, before we go, how can people connect with you? Because I know that you are blogging, you are sharing your experience. How can they connect with you if they want to know more about your journey?
Absolutely. So on Instagram, you can find me at Deja Riley. On TikTok, at Deja and Jimmy Izzy, because it's me and my husband's TikTok. I also have a Substack. I have a YouTube. You just type in Deja Riley, you can find me. And yeah, I'll be sharing more on all of my social platforms as I continue on this postpartum journey. And I can't wait to share all the things that I'm learning from the Parent's Guide to Self-Regulation.
Yes. Well, thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, Deja. This was a pleasure. So, cannot wait for the next one. So, you all, again, this is stop number 3 in the virtual book tour. So, number 4, conversation number 4 is actually on Monday. And for that topic, I'll be speaking with Patricia White, and I'll share more about that later. And we're going to be talking about dysregulation for stay-at-home moms. And so if that's a topic that you are interested in, tune in. We'll be doing that one on Monday. But thank you all for tuning in tonight. Deja, please enjoy your night. I hope you have a good, restful night tonight.
So much. I am, you know what? It's going to happen because you said it. We're speaking it into existence. It's happening.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, I will talk to you soon.
Okay. Thanks so much. Bye, everyone.